FAIRtax is coming, don't stand in the way. FAIRtax is coming across the USA. FAIRtax is coming, clean up this mess. We got to get rid of the IRS. Hey, hey! Hey, hey!
Hello and welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
And we are the FAIRtax
FAIRtax
guys, reminding you that the IRS needs to go away. And there's one and only one way to make that happen, and that is to pass the fair tax.
The only legislation in Congress right now that will eliminate the IRS is the fair tax. The only one.
Don't be fooled by folks who say we want to make it so we can file your taxes on a postcard and we can get rid of the IRS, or the one Paul Ryan was saying that really makes me laugh. We're going to turn the IRS into a nice little warm and fuzzy agency that's focused on customer service.
No, nobody believes that except for maybe him.
Oh, no way.
No. And I think you used the analogy once. How do you tame a rattlesnake?
You don't. You shoot it. You get rid of it.
Put it out of its misery.
That's what we're going to have to do with the IRS and the fair tax again, by eliminating the income tax that the IRS is charged with administering and enforcing. Removing that income tax from our lives is the only way to remove the IRS from our lives.
Yeah.
For as long as the federal government is taxing income at the federal level, there will be an IRS. Don't let anyone fool you. They might try to change the name on it.
Yeah, they might call it something else.
It will still be what we know today as the IRS, and will probably continue as the IRS forever.
Yeah, and it begs the question, why hasn't President Trump fired the IRS commissioner? I mean, he was up in front of Congress stonewalling. He's lied to Congress. I mean, why is he still there?
Oh, well.
All right, rhetorical question.
Probably has some political connections. I don't know. But anyhow, we've been talking about the advantages of the fair tax for the past little while, and we're going back to the bashing the IRS because it's so much fun.
Well, especially this subject of civil asset forfeiture.
Now, that's something that most people will not. We'll recognize that most people will not have to deal with this. But for the very few who do, it is devastating.
It is. It's totally devastating because it affects a lot of innocent people who have done absolutely nothing wrong. Now, first off, it is a tool that Congress created actually back in 1970. They passed the Bank Secrecy Act. And that just says, you've got criminal organizations and drug dealers and so forth moving large amounts of money. Well, the Bank Secrecy Act says if you deposit or transfer $10,000 or more, it must be reported to the IRS. And oh my gosh, I'm having a senior moment here. But the bank people are trained to flag these transfers and so forth to notify the IRS. Okay, I have no problem with a tool that's used to fight crime. That's a good idea, all right, because crime hurts people, the average taxpayer. So let's do that. Well, then we had this civil asset forfeiture that's been around since the 80s. And that is if the IRS thinks that you're transferring money or depositing money illegally, they can confiscate it.
Now, don't you think that they should at least go to the step of figuring out what you're doing before they reach in and take your bank account?
Yeah, it seems that that's too much trouble for them.
They don't do that.
Yeah. So
believe it or not, they don't make sure that they are getting after a guilty person before they come in, seize their bank account, take all their money. If just as a small business, you take all the operating capital out of the business, you cripple their ability to do business, and they're doing this to people, and they're doing it intentionally. The little guys that they know are innocent that can't fight back.
That's the part that's really hardest to take. It would be, if it was a matter of incompetence on the part of the IRS and they didn't know they were doing this, but we had a report a couple of episodes ago that the Treasury Tax Inspector General, the Treasury Inspector General for the Taxing Authority, did a study of civil asset forfeiture, studied 278 cases in which they know they could definitely find out where the money was coming from and what the money was. in that case, in that study, 91% of the victims of this were perfectly innocent people. Small business people, like maybe somebody running a convenience store, they have a lot of cash on hand. They have to deposit it. And the IRS sees these cash deposits and says, oh, hey, let's take a look at that. Purposely targeting innocent people. And that's why we're focusing on the IRS today. And we're going to get a little farther into the civil asset.
If you've got a tool that's used to be fighting crime, you should have to convince somebody, maybe a judge, before you take a step as drastic as literally taking people's money, taking their bank accounts from them. You should be able to convince, or should have to convince, maybe a judge or something, that there is the high probability of criminal activity going on. Do a little fact-finding before you grab somebody's bank account like that, and they don't do that.
No, they don't do that, and they don't even bother to notify you. They don't accuse you of anything. They don't notify you of anything. They simply seize your bank account and then let you know about it.
Yeah, then you try to make withdrawal, and the bank says, sorry.
Yeah, it's bad. So if you're running a business and you need to buy supplies with that money, well, sorry, too bad. So let's go back here. This first part is from the FBI website, FBI.gov, and they're talking about civil asset forfeiture, and they say types of forfeiture. Criminal forfeiture is brought as a part of criminal prosecution of a defendant. It is an in personam against the person action. All right, it requires the government to indict the property used or derived from the crime along with the defendant. Okay, so that is something done against the defendant, somebody who they accuse of committing a crime. But get this, civil judicial forfeiture is the judicial process that does not require a criminal conviction, and it is a legal tool that allows the enforcement to seize property that is involved in the crime. Referred to as an in rem, or in other words, against the property, it is an action filed against the property itself rather than the person. I mean, to a non-attorney type person, this seems bizarre.
Run that by me again. On second thought.
Yeah, they're taking action against the property, not against the person. To those of us outside the law, that just sounds totally bizarre. But that's what it is. That's what civil asset forfeiture is. And hundreds of people have been victimized by this, by the IRS. And again, they're doing it not because they're incompetent. They're doing it because they are purposely targeting innocent people. Keep that in mind.
Yeah. So we've got no problem if somebody's running guns, for example, that and the cops come in there and catch them, that they can confiscate those guns. They have to give those up. They can forfeit that.
Yeah.
But if you're an innocent person making deposits in your bank account, cash deposits because you're running a cash business, the IRS, which is not a police agency, even though they kind of act like it sometimes, they should not be able to, as a matter of philosophical what's right and what's wrong, they should not be able to just come in and grab people's bank accounts just because they see something that might possibly be a violation without them actually checking it out and seeing if there is one.
And let me back up a little bit. This thing about the Bank Secrecy Act, if you deposit more than $10,000, well, part of that act was if you try to avoid the $10,000 limit by doing a $3,000 deposit here, a $5,000 deposit there, and so forth, that's called structuring. That's also illegal. And that's where these small business people run into problems. I mean, like the example I used. And there is an example. You can look this up on the internet. There was a fella in North Carolina, I believe, running a convenience store. And the IRS seized his bank account to the tune of over $100,000. How is he supposed to buy supplies for his convenience store? And he did absolutely nothing wrong. People come in, they pay cash, he's got to deposit the money from time to time. If he waits a couple days, he might have several $1,000s, maybe $4,000 or $5,000. Nothing illegal about that. The IRS doesn't even bother to call him. They don't accuse him of anything. They just freeze his bank account.
How much did he have to spend clearing his name?
Oh, yeah, he probably
don't even want to go there either, do you?
And again, I can't say this often enough, the IRS is doing it on purpose. It's not because they're incompetent, it's because they're tyrannical.
It's because they're a criminal enterprise that needs to be put out of business. And again, the only way to put them out of business is to get rid of the income tax and replace it with a fair tax. That is the only way that the IRS goes away.
Yep. Now here's an article, and this is from a website, and it's kind of a long name here. MoneyLaunderingWatchblog.com. Money Laundering Watch Blog. I mean,
they watch people launder money.
I guess. You can have a website for anything, but this is from April of this year. Forfeiture actions by the Internal Revenue Criminal Investigation based on alleged structuring activity have come under fire yet again. The Inspector General for the Tax Administration issued March 30, and this is the same report that we talked about, where they found out that 91% of the forfeitures were for perfectly innocent people, and they were doing it on purpose. This report was followed very shortly by a bipartisan reintroduction on April 3rd of 2017 of, now this is the name of the bill that they're introducing, Restraining Excessive Seizure of Property through the Exploitation of Civil Asset Forfeiture Tools Act. In other words, that spells out respect.
Oh, how cool is that?
Yeah. But here's my point. Who empowered...
Wonder how long it took somebody to think that up.
That was one of the staffers' homework assignment one night.
I bet.
Pardon me. But let's think about this. Who empowered the IRS to do this?
We do.
Yeah.
By letting them continue to exist.
Yeah, Congress did. All right? And so Congress empowers the IRS to do this with their legislation. They created the IRS, and worse than that, they gave them the authority to do this nonsense.
And they give them $12 billion a year to do it with.
Yeah. So Congress
That's our money.
Yeah, with our money. Congress creates the problem by, one, creating the IRS, and two, giving them the authority to ignore the Bill of Rights, completely ignore the Bill of Rights. And then what does Congress do? They file more legislation to correct the mess they already created.
Then they create more tax code that they could go in and mess with.
I mean, is this...
Does anybody see a pattern here yet? Something that we really need to get rid of?
This is really crazy. I mean, you couldn't think of a worse system. So, anyways, all right, what do we got here? Well, recently, and this was actually just about a week ago, as on the date from the day we record this, Supreme Court rejects unlawful property grabs.
Ooh, that sounds promising.
Yeah, the Supreme Court. All right, that's all the way up there, and this is from the Conservative Tribune. A huge victory for proponents of civil asset forfeiture reform. The Supreme Court ruled unanimously.
Ooh, that's hard to get.
Yeah, unanimously Monday that the Comprehensive Forfeiture Act of 1984 does not give authorities the right to seize property from co-conspirators who did not profit from a crime. So, you're still in the area of criminal enterprise here, but it is a step in the right direction. Congress did not authorize the government to confiscate substitute property from other defendants or co-conspirators, Justice Sonia Sotomayor said in her decision, and so on. And it gives more information I'm not going to get into. But the Supreme Court got involved on this one. All right, that's a step in the right direction. But there's a much easier way to take care of this. As far as the IRS is concerned, get rid of the IRS.
Shoot them.
Jeez. I mean, how many parts of the Bill of Rights are they violating?
You want a list?
Well,
you happen to have one.
Yeah, just happen to have a list here of the Bill of Rights. All right, the Bill of Rights. Now, when Congress adopted the Constitution of the United States, it almost didn't get voted on. It almost didn't get accepted because there wasn't anything in there specifically spelling out the rights of the individuals. And so certain people, the framers of the Constitution, said, we need to do this. And we said, okay. And they said, yes. The first thing Congress will do when they convene under this new Constitution is they will adopt what's now called the Bill of Rights. There were actually 17 amendments proposed, 17 amendments. 12 of them were considered. 10 of them got passed into law as amendments to the Constitution. And if you're not familiar, the Constitution is not very long.
I thought you were a science teacher. You're doing pretty good at history.
Well, since I've been working on the FAIRtax, I've had to learn this stuff, and it's fascinating. I mean, I listened it when you read. I read the biography of James Madison by Lynn Cheney. Fascinating. She went into so much detail. You really get a feel for the times. And then, of course, that very famous biography of John Adams that was on HBO. That's a great series too. And you get a feeling for this stuff. The founding fathers and the framers of the Constitution were absolutely passionate about this. So, Amendment 1, and I'm going to not read the whole thing, but the parts that are pertaining to us. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or freedom of press. Now, what do we have with the current IRS? We've got targeting scandals.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Where certain groups were trying to get nonprofit status, and the IRS and they've been found guilty of targeting these conservative groups, and they were looking for specific words in the title of these organizations, like freedom, Constitution,
like Patriot.
Yeah, Patriot. They were looking.
And the same groups, when they changed their names, got it through without a problem.
That's true. And by the way, that's been going on since 2010, so that makes it about 10 years now. How many people in the IRS have been disciplined?
0.
Yeah, absolutely 0. Not one person in the IRS has been disciplined in any way. I mean, not even had their hands slapped, okay?
Yeah, well, Lois Lerner retired with full benefits. So
yeah. There was another article I saw that recently that Lois Lerner and one of the other people, somebody that worked under her, they're claiming that if they're forced to testify in front of Congress, their lives will be threatened.
Oh.
Yeah, in other words, this is another excuse for stonewalling.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well.
All right, so the IRS is abridging freedom of speech indirectly by interfering with these people, trying to form an organization in which they're trying to hold the government to account, and the IRS doesn't like that, so they are definitely abridging the freedom of speech and press of these organizations. Now,
I think the Fourth Amendment is the one that the civil asset forfeiture just really flies in the face of.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Fourth Amendment, the right of the people to secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall be issued but upon probable cause.
Yeah, the protection against unreasonable search and seizure.
So
I think it's kind of unreasonable for the Internal Revenue Service to grab somebody's bank account without even accusing them of doing something wrong. We think you might be, therefore we're going to take all your money.
Yeah. Has anybody in the IRS
ever think that's reasonable?
Has anybody in the IRS ever read the Constitution or the Bill of Rights? It seems like they have no idea what it's in there.
Oh, it's one of those, that's nice, but it doesn't apply to me kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess so. So, this Bob is right. This Fourth Amendment, they are really violating that. But again, Congress has given them the authority to do this. So, and the IRS...
nobody's holding them accountable for trampling all over this stuff.
No, they aren't.
Well, we're trying to.
Terrible situation.
That's why we're here on FAIRtax Power Radio telling you about it.
Yep.
Amen.
So, now, the Amendment 5. No person shall be held to answer, and it goes on, a capital crime. It's got a lot of legal jargon there. No person shall be held to answer, nor be deprived of life, liberty, property, without due process of the law. Due process. Where's the due process in civil asset forfeiture? All right. Now, again, I have no problem with civil asset forfeiture if it's done against truly criminal enterprises. All right. Use it to fight crime. Don't use it to harass innocent people.
Wish we could go in there and grab the IRS's computers. That's a criminal enterprise. Well, just a thought off the top of my head.
Yeah, but what occurs to me is when they're trying to legally get a hold of the IRS's computers, all their hard drives magically go poof.
They poof into thin air. They're all gone. Yeah, but the due process thing is a biggie. That's something you hear a lot of, and the IRS does not regard due process.
Absolutely,
they set themselves up as judge, jury, executioner.
Yeah,
and there's no due process at all. There's not even a trial with these people that get their bank accounts seized just because the IRS thinks you might be structuring something, and it needs to go away.
And they're doing it on purpose. And it doesn't make sense. Why are they purposely harassing innocent people? It's not like the government's going to get a whole bunch more money. The government spends over $3 trillion a year. All right. Civil asset forfeiture amounts to maybe $1 billion, something like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a lot of money. And it's a lot of money to the individuals who are being affected. But it's not something that's going to balance the federal budget.
Yeah, but they're going after people who they know can't fight back.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what they're doing.
Yeah, or that if they do fight back, it's going to be very, very expensive. Oh, and by the way, we brought this up before. Okay, let's say somebody sues the IRS to try to get their money back, and the IRS has to go to court. Who pays the IRS's court fees?
We do.
Yeah, we do. Yep. That's part of taxpayers. So yeah, that's a nice situation, huh?
Yeah. Oh, don't get me guarded there. Moving along.
Yeah. All right. Amendment 6. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy trial, speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and the district wherein the crime shall have been committed, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witness against him. None of that applies with this civil asset forfeiture when they go after innocent people. Again, that's completely ignored. So, and guess what, folks? We're doing a lot of complaining about the IRS, but there's one very simple cure for this. The very simple cure is the fair tax.
I know. Fair tax.
Fair tax, absolutely. Because the fair tax is a consumption tax, a sales tax. And if the federal government does not tax income, they don't need the IRS.
Yeah. Who is going to enforce the fair tax? The next question for you.
Well, it's very simple. First off, it's going to be collected at the retail level by the vendors, and it's going to be submitted to their state sales tax organizations. 45 of the states already have a sales tax organization in place. So it's very simple.
That is big. The states are going to collect the fair tax and remit it up to the federal government.
Yeah.
So there is no federal agency necessary to administer and enforce this thing. The only thing we'll need at the federal level under the fair tax is a small office within the Department of the Treasury to receive the money that the state is remitting up to the feds.
That's right.
But all of the enforcement is going to happen at the state level, and with a consumption tax, 100% of the enforcement investigation and action is going to be against the vendor. Yeah. Not against the individual.
That's right.
When you buy something, you pay the tax, and if the vendor does not remit that tax like he's supposed to, that's their problem, not yours.
Now, as we've said before, Bob and I live in Florida. Florida has a sales tax that does not have an income tax, and they guard that sales tax very carefully. So if a vendor is trying to play fast and loose with them and not pay, what they're supposed to, they come down on them with like a ton of bricks. And I like that because I don't want an income tax here in Florida.
No.
Let's abide by the sales tax, which makes it easy for everybody. And, Florida's economy is doing pretty good. That's because we can attract businesses. And one of the reasons we don't have an income tax.
Yeah, and we keep hitting on this too. A sales tax is it's not impossible, but it is much more difficult to evade.
Yeah,
if it's built into the price of everything you buy, you pay it. Yeah, try walking up to the cash register and saying, "I'm not paying the tax," and they'll say, "You ain't getting your items."
Yeah, security. It's really hard to evade a sales tax. And I remember that one guy who was going around talking about the flaws of the fair tax. Remember that guy?
Oh, yes, I do.
And he said, "Well, if you if your lawn guy doesn't submit the sales tax to the IRS, well, first off, there is no IRS. The government's going to come after you." That's
no,
foolish.
They don't know that.
No, No, if there's a registered vendor out there who's not turning over his tax receipts, the state taxing organization is going to come after that vendor. It's not going to come after their customers. Their customers...
Yeah, but the point-of-sale software handles all this.
Yeah, exactly.
And as Randy was saying earlier, that a huge percentage of the retail sales in this country happen in a relatively few places.
Yeah.
Walmart, Target, your big box retailers like that. That's where the enforcement is really going to be handled, and those guys aren't going to mess with the feds.
Yeah, I believe
the state income. The state
I believe there's
people.
about I think 18 to 20 million businesses. Between very tiny businesses and huge mega corporations, and 90%, like Bob is saying, 90% of the retail sales are done by about 500 organizations, 500 businesses. And they're not going to,
So the administration cost of the fair tax is minuscule compared to what it costs to administer and enforce
Absolutely.
the income tax.
Yeah, for a small business
Which
right
means
now.
it much more effective, much more efficient, and they can probably get away with collecting a little bit less if they don't waste as much.
Actually, each vendor is going to get 0.25%. Let's say they collect $100,000 in taxes that go to the federal government. But they give them to their state organization. They get to keep 0.25%, and the state gets to keep 0.25% of whatever it collects and passes on to the U.S. Treasury. So they are given some return for their hard work.
All right, if we can get rid of a criminal enterprise that shreds the Bill of Rights, and there is a way to do it, how do we make this happen?
All right, we've got to let people in Congress know. On the last episode, I just realized there's one way you can contact the president, because the president is a good salesman. Go to whitehouse.gov/contact, whitehouse.gov/contact, and you can leave a message for the president. If we had 1 million people leaving a message for President Trump, we need the fair tax. Forget this income tax baloney. We need the fair tax. I'm sure it would get his attention.
And he is surrounded by people who are familiar with the fair tax. Vice President
that's right.
Pence was a co-sponsor when he was in Congress.
That's true.
Mike Huckabee is a big fair tax person. His daughter is now working in the administration. She knows all about it.
That's right.
So it's not like he doesn't know it, but he has to hear from us, the grassroots, to make it happen.
That's right. Yeah, they've got to know that the people are behind this. So contact the White House, contact your congressmen and your senators. The best way, call their office. Look them up. If you're not familiar with them, look it up on their website. Find out what their office is, whether you call their office in Washington or the local office. Call them up. If they're not a co-sponsor, find out why. I expect my congressmen and my senators to be a co-sponsor of the fair tax.
Ask them why they like a system that's so full of evasion. Ask them why they like a system that is so just authoritarian and autocratic and just nasty to people.
Yeah, look at the last episode. Randy said the evasion rate is up around 26%. That's horrible. The rest of us are making up. By the way, Bob, I did that quick calculation. It was $693 billion is not being paid that should be paid. Divide that by the population of the United States, 323 million, comes out to over $2,100 per person that we have to cough up because other people are not paying their fair share.
Now, how much skydiving can I do on that much money? Probably quite a bit.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. Okay, so, all right. So contact the president. Contact your Congress critters in person. Go to popvox.com. We've talked about that before. Go to fairtax.org and learn more about it there. You can also make a contribution if the spirit moves you. And there's a lot of good information on bigsolution.org. Bigsolution.org.
And write us at thefairtaxguys@gmail.com or like us on our Facebook page. You can leave us questions and comments. We will get back to you for absolute certain on every last one of them.
That's right. Yep. I check it every single day.
All right. Well, that's just about going to wrap it up. Do it to it. Man, time flies when you're having fun, don't it?
Yeah.
That's going to do it for this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. Again, thank you so much for listening. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
The FAIRtax Guys reminding you that the fair tax is America's big solution. And once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
Fair tax is coming.